Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Andy Curry, and today I am excited because I have with me on the line Chuck Gallagher, who has been speaking for an astounding 2 decades. That's 20 years, folks. And the content he speaks on is ethics, which is his primary one, and that has to do with business ethics. He also speaks on communication styles and sales, and he speaks in the U.S. and internationally. Chuck is based out of South Carolina. He has written 2 books. The first one is called Second Chances: Transforming Adversity into Opportunity. That sounds like a great subject. The second one is called Message from the Mountain, and wait till you hear what he says about that one. Chuck, welcome to the program.
Andy, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
We are excited to have you with us, Chuck. Now, let's talk about your speaking business. I want to know who you're helping, how you're helping them. Give us some examples that you're teaching, and let us know the groups that you're speaking to, that kind of thing. Well,
fundamentally, I speak to corporate audiences, association groups, universities, and I have the privilege of talking with them about the choices that people make and the consequences that follow. And if you think about that for a second, you know, some people ask me, said, "Yeah, how do you get in the business ethics world?" I mean, that let's put it this way: there's probably a lot of opportunity to talk about it, but yet everyone thinks they're ethical, right, until they're not. And so the background that led me to this is several decades ago. In fact, back in the late 80s, I was tax partner in a CPA firm. I had testified before Congress on tax law, written articles in national magazines, taught continuing education courses in 30 states, and he had a great career. But I was also pretty stupid as a young guy. And I was overextended and underfunded, or that means I had way too much debt. And to solve that problem, I embezzled money from a client's trust fund. Now, I didn't start off thinking, I'm going to go out and do something wrong. That didn't cross my mind. What crossed my mind is I had an immediate financial problem that needed to be solved. I had the opportunity to solve it, and in my head, as pea-brain as it might have been, but in my head, I said, well, you know, I'm just borrowing the money.
Let me interject and say, I understand the courage it takes for you to say that. So please continue.
Well, the facts are, I could have convinced myself with the illusion that what I was doing was okay. And I did. And every choice we make in life has a consequence. It's a law. It's just like the law of gravity. Every choice has a consequence.
It does.
So as your listeners might imagine, if you go sowing a bunch of really bad seeds, something pretty gnarly is going to happen. And that collapsed in 1990. I was faced with going back home to tell my wife and my partners that I was fundamentally nothing more than a liar and a thief. And although I made restitution to the people that I embezzled money from, which, by the way, does not make this right, but even though I did that, that did not stop the what I call the train consequence, which was on the track and steaming forward. So on October 2nd, 1995, I took 23 physical steps from the curb into federal prison. And wow. There I became 11-642-058, an inmate. Now, I say that because that was also a pivotal point for me. Because by this point in time, everything that I had worked for and everything that defined who I was gone, fundamentally stripped away. I was literally stripped naked. That's literal and figurative. Mm-hmm. And so while I was there in federal prison, I could have either chosen to whine about it and be on the wambulance, so to speak, and be a victim, or I could choose to be a victor. And so I decided, well, I need to think about this for a second. If every choice we make has a consequence, and I just really made some bad choices, and the consequence stinks, then what would happen if I made a different set of choices? So upon my release from prison, I made a different set of choices. And within 10 years, I was released in 96. So by 2006, I was a senior VP of sales and marketing in a publicly traded company. And people kept asking me, wait a minute, I want to get this. With WorldCom and Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley and all of these things that have taken place, how can you be a senior VP in a public company and a convicted felon? And that's when I began speaking, because that's when I had the legitimate credibility to be able to say to someone from personal experience, every choice in life we make has a consequence. Bad seeds, bad consequences. Good seeds, good consequences, even though I still have to deal with the fact that today I am a convicted felon.
Amazing story. Amazing. And so thus was born Speaking on Business Ethics.
Yeah, and Andy, here's the thing, and I say this, and I say it really respectfully. Number one, there's not a lot of us that do speak on business ethics, but a fair number that do approach it from an intellectual perspective or an academic perspective. And there's nothing wrong with either of those. But I come into my programs in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Mm-hmm. And it's a little startling to people who happen to be in the audience, but pretty soon they connect the dots with, wait a minute, but for the grace of God could be me. So maybe we need to pay attention to what are the three factors that come into place that would cause an otherwise smart, intelligent person to make dumb, stupid choices. So my ethics presentations are very practical and very hard-hitting, so that hopefully people that hear them will leave and think about the choices they make as opposed to doing them just mindlessly.
I have this this picture in my head of you coming in orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, and I'll bet it's just you could hear a pin drop when you're walking out. Am I right?
That's absolutely the truth. And I will say kind of a funny story. I was doing a presentation earlier this week, and I was at a hotel kind of in the back area before I was introduced to come in. And one of the wait staff saw that, there's this guy in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. So halfway through the middle of my presentation, security came to the meeting saying, we understand there's an escaped convict here in the hotel, and we didn't want this to be a problem for your meeting.
Really?
So the pin will drop sometimes, and then sometimes there are some humorous consequences that come as a result.
Right. Well, I was going to eventually ask you the question, what gives you the right to talk about business ethics? And I certainly get it. Now, I would think your presentation is probably one of the most powerful there is compared to other people, and you said there's not many people teaching on that. Is that correct?
That's correct. And not egotistically saying this, but I am told that, yes, it is fairly powerful because it's practical. It's something that you can take home and you can put into practice in your personal life as well as in your professional life.
What is the first sentence or paragraph that you say to people when you go out in your talks?
Every choice has a consequence. Those are the first words out of my mouth, and that is what I end with, because I want people to connect the dots with what we do every day, and every choice creates the next step that we take in our lives and the consequence that follows. And Andy, one of the problems today is, and I'm going to make it easy for me, but you take young people. If I go to a university group, I'm going to ask them a question. How many of you are on Facebook? Well, it's most everybody. But then again, that's people my age as well.
Right.
But how many of you are on Snapchat? And everybody raises their hand. Well, help me understand. Why are you on Snapchat? What's the deal behind that? Oh, well, here's what it is. What it is when I go out and I send a text or I send a picture, it disappears after 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
See, the whole premise behind the app is you can do something that you don't want other people to know, and it disappears. See, there's no consequence.
Right.
Well, people who signed up for Ashley Madison probably thought there wasn't going to be the consequence that there is today. Today, people are carrying on a conversation about, why were you signed up and why did your name and email pop up here?
I want to explain real quickly for those who may not know what Chuck means by Ashley Madison. It is a website where if you want to cheat on your spouse, you can go sign up. And hackers got in there and got everybody's name, email, credit card information, everything, and put it online for the world to see.
That is correct. And the whole premise behind Ashley Madison was we're going to provide a, quote, secure place where you can cheat. Every choice has a consequence. So you go out and you think there's no consequence because someone tells you there's no consequence, because Snapchat, the app, makes things disappear. There always is a consequence. And if I can help people connect the concept between the choice that we make and a potential consequence that follows, I'm the one that says there is always a consequence. You may not see it today. You may not understand exactly what it is. There can be delays in when those consequences happen, but sure as the sun rises tomorrow, there are consequences.
Absolutely. Well, so as far as your book, Second Chances, Transforming Adversity into Opportunity, did that book arise from that, or was it before that?
No, actually, it arose from that. I made the commitment when I went to prison that I was going to take the time to write every day. Had no idea what the outcome of that was going to be, but I wanted there to be something that would remind me and document the experience there. So a decade after I was released from prison, I took the old notes out and I began writing, because at that point, I was now competent and capable to say, you can have bad things happen to you in your life. That doesn't make you bad.
Right.
A gentleman said to me one time, he said, son, you've made a terrible mistake, but you are not a mistake. And there's a clear distinction there. And so I have been able to take the adversity of being a convicted felon, and now I'm a vice president in a public company and a professional speaker, and have the privilege of speaking internationally. So I say that not as bragging rights, but as a statement that anyone who has adversity in their life can overcome that and transform that if they're willing.
Right. And I've heard you say several times, not bragging rights and such. I can tell you're very humble, Chuck, and that's a terrific trait. Now, your book, Message from the Mountain, I find that intriguing. Would you talk about that for a second?
I'd be happy to. I lived in Dallas, Texas for a while. And on the way back to the Carolinas, my wife and I had our first grandchild, and we decided we'd move a bit closer. And on the way back, I experienced something unusual as we crossed the Appalachian Mountains, moving into the Carolinas. And so one night, literally, I sat down. I was unable to sleep, so I sat down at the computer and just started writing. And several hours later, I had written 2 chapters in a book. And I had no clue where this was coming from. I just wrote 2 chapters in a book called Message from the Mountain. Mm-hmm. And the whole premise behind the book is talking about how you connect with your life's purpose. And so I began writing, and it took the scope of probably 3 or 4 years. It was written off and on over time, but the book really connects with the concept of we all have a life purpose. And sometimes we need to slow down a bit from the fast pace of daily activity to just be willing to listen and to connect with what that true life purpose is, so that when the time comes that we no longer are here, we might be able to look back and recognize that our existence had value and meaning for others.
That is terrific. Well, Chuck, I'm big on self-development and trying to figure out why things happen in one's life, and it's just a journey, really. And boy, have you had a journey. And if you could step back from your journey, which I'm sure you have, what do you see? What comes to mind on a summary? What would you tell someone?
I think everyone's life has a purpose, and I believe that we can be distracted from why we are here, and sometimes that equates to what appears to be clear mistakes. But I also have this fundamental belief that that our inherent nature is to get ourselves aligned with why we're here on this planet. And so, as I look back at my life, I see what appear to be mistakes. And in fact, people will ask me, Andy, if you had to do it over again, would you? Well, the answer is no, because going to prison sucked.
Yeah.
But I also have to say, prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. And if it weren't for that experience, you and I wouldn't be talking today. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to talk with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people around the country about choices that we make and consequences that follow. So I have to believe that in the divine plan of my life, I am perfectly where I need to be, even though it's been an interesting and quite eventful journey.
Wow. Well, that's terrific information, and you said something that I think a lot of people just aren't sure about, and you said you've got to align your life with what your purpose is. Do you have any advice for people on how to do that?
Andy, I'm kind of big on looking back at yourself, and maybe other people can help you with this, but looking at yourself and looking at what you find joy in doing. And I'll give you a quick, simple example. I started off as a young guy in college as a music major in college. And it was kind of funny because I was vocal performance. And my teacher said, you should teach. And I said, perform, teach. And we got into this argument. And finally I said, you know what? I am not going to be an underpaid teacher. I went into accounting. Completely gave it up.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Now, I think everybody knows I pretty well screwed up accounting. And now what am I doing? I am standing before audiences, speaking to them, which is vocal performance. Yet I'm able to talk about something that also can be meaningful. So I tend to think if you follow what your heart leads you to do, you are automatically going to be going in the right direction. And if you get off track, you will probably have opportunities to get back on track. It just might be a little different than what you might have imagined as a young person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great advice. And I would like to add to that, you just got to check yourself once in a while and see how you feel about it.
Absolutely.
And don't lie to yourself. Are you enjoying it, or are you loving it, or you just kind of like it? Those are good indicators, I would say. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for pulling back the curtain and giving us a peek into your life. It's very courageous for you to come out and say that. And I know it's also soul cleansing, I would think. And there's going to be people who want to know how to get hold of you, to hear you speak, want to know more. So how do they do that?
Well, the easy thing, and there's two things that I'll throw out. Number one, of course, you can find me at chuckgallagher.com. Gallagher is Gallagher, chuckgallagher.com. But if you want to reach out because you have a question, or there's something in your life that you want to talk about, and sometimes that's pretty private, I'm an open person and willing to take those calls. The easiest way to reach me is email, chuck@chuckgallagher.com, and I am literally happy to talk with you.
Okay. Well, Chuck, thank you so much. It's been a joy to speak with you.
And it's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.